Yeah. So the screen. So I have to call Dalit, hey, right?
Mm-hmm.
Avim Muroya, Shachoitahu mehavilim haleitzim hasoinim lemarchichim. But if he sees the one who sinned, right? Until now, we said he saw someone do something, even if it's in a explicit avera, did it privately, right? So you have to down him the kapschus. You're not allowed to speak about it. You're not allowed to publicize it. But if he's one of those avilim haleitzim hamoisoinim lemarchichim, he's a real sinner, and he's not interested in changing. Because he also said the proper thing to do is to call the guy over privately and give him techacha in a sweet way, right? Because here he's a person who will not accept what you say to him. And such a person easily repeats and repeats this because he's not interested. It's very possible that even though he only sinned once now, he may sin again. The place is clean. So for them, it's best that he recounts what he saw to the Dayan, the people in charge of the city. They should call him to task. I wonder if it means he should even give Malchus, but certainly give him Musav Yafishum Isa Alaba and make sure he doesn't continue to do the Avera. Says the Chavetz Chaim, it would appear also that you're allowed to tell the relatives of the one who's sinning, if you, I guess, evaluate, if you know that if they speak to the sinner, he'll accept it from them.
Today we call that, I think, an intervention, so to say.
Right? He says on the bottom in the Chaf Daled, since he said, referred us to the Baruch Chaim, said he discussed earlier that since the relatives, they're not obligated to believe what he says, he's an Eid Echad, and if so, it doesn't translate into an obligation to be Mochiach, and if so, then there's no reason to tell them if they're not going to be Mochiach. Afal Pikein says the Chavetz Chaim near the Mutal Asapel of Nehem. It is permissible to say it to them. Since the intention of the one saying it is for the benefit of the sinner, for and he sees and he feels that the Kravim will believe him, and they will rebuke the person based on what he tells them. But the Masapa has to be given a lot of thought first. Why? Because generally, relatives aren't so quick to accept a bad story about a relative of theirs. And if they're not going to accept what he says, then he's not allowed to say it because there's no tayelis. It could just cause a big machlokes. Well, Sheval Taisa, if it's better, Sheval Taisa don't say anything. Okay? However, he says the intention of the Misaper, the one who's saying it over, needs to be l'shem shamayim or b'kinas Hashem. Not because he has some previous dislike or hate or some what's it called to grind, some bone to grind, some axe to grind, axe to grind, and now he's finding a great opening, that he could say bad about the guy. Not allowed to say it in such a case. Only if his intention is l'shem shamayim. And the shaftim should also only punish the chayta privately, and not embarrass him publicly. That's talking where two people saw. Now again, we're talking about a person that technically you'd be allowed to say the Lashon Hara because he's from the Avilim, Hashainim, etc. But if he's 1/8, lo yirah chaver, he can't tell anyone. Because his testimony to the Shaftim, to the Rayonim, has no standing. Because they can't rely on it. So they're not allowed to listen to him. They're not allowed to be makabel. Will be considered, this Mesapra will be considered a Moitzi Shemra. Ramar Rabbi Seinu, Kolameid Yechidi, anyone who testifies alone, Al Chaver B'Dvar Afer V'Chulu, doesn't tell us the rest of it. V'Amru Chazal, Gimel Kadosh Baruch Hu Soinen, and the three people Hashem hates, Ve'echad Mehem, one of them is Harei Dvar Erva B'Chaveri. Someone sees another Jew transgress in the Dvar Erva, Umeid B'I B'Yechidi, and he testifies about it alone. He's only a 1/8. But he is allowed to. He is allowed to tell it over to his Rebbe, his confidant. If he knows that the Rebbe will believe him, like two Eidim. And the Rebbe is allowed, based on what he heard from this one person, he's allowed to hate the sinner and distance himself from him until he finds out that he did tshuva. Also, the rabbi but even though the Rebbe was allowed to hear it and accept it, he's not allowed to say it over to anyone because he's no better than if he saw it himself. And we're saying that the Eid Echad's not allowed to say it's over. As we wrote earlier. Okay, vote. Nearly yoibish, Hashem mishpatel l'shnois bivalta. He says further, it appears to me that a person that his ways are that he's a repeating offender. That even if it's the Rebbe that he wants to tell it to him, is not so sanua. It's possible that the Rebbe may say it over to somebody. But this Rebbe is someone who can influence the one who did wrong. That he should stop what he's doing. So he says, so it's possible that you're allowed to tell him. Again, if the Rebbe will believe him, as two Eidim, being that the intention of the Mesaper is only for the benefit that he found someone who can influence the sinner, and it's not to in any way degrade the sinner. So it's possible, because Chaim doesn't say mamash mutter, he says it's possible that it's mutter in such a case. Because again, we always have that heter of tayelis. If I'm doing it only tayelis, there's a gain here, then it's not considered lashon hara. Now let's go back now to what we were talking about. I think that even if two people saw him do the sin, and he's a person that easily will go and sin again, it still only allows you to tell the Dayoni a year, because they could take the matter in hands and stop him. But you can't tell Stam. because the fact is, you only saw him sin once. Perhaps it was a one-time thing, even though he's not a tzaddik, he's not a Beinoni, he's a person that easily will repeat, but you only saw him doing it once. So to tell the you're allowed to tell because first of all, you're allowed to, because they could stop him. So there's a tailus. But to publicize it, that's awesome. Because maybe he's not really a sinner, he just once he slipped. Perhaps he did tshuva, nenach b'miras leiv al zeh. So you can't say that the sinner is not included in what's called amisecha, and therefore you can't spread lashon hara about him. Okay, I had said before, people don't believe in Torah, they're not amisecha, and you're allowed to say lashon hara. There's no issur. But this person, since you only saw him sin once, even though he's not such a God-fearing person, and it's very possible to do it again, you still, based on that one time, you can't say that he's not amisecha, and you can't say the lashon hara about him.
But I thought he was a repeat offender, but if he's a repeat offender, and two Adam see him,
yeah,
they have a chiyuv to go to Bezdin, and Bezdin has to do it. But Sinna, they have to reprimand him or take action appropriately, right? That Bezdin would. But if he's a repeat offender and a single person sees him,
well, again, we're saying
why are we suddenly going, well, we only saw it this one time, and maybe he did tshuva, and maybe
we don't know that, because the person who saw this one time doesn't know that he did it many times. He can't just paskin that the guy's a repeated offender. He does know the guy is not a God-fearing person, but he hasn't seen him do it more than once, so he doesn't have rights.
Sure.
I think he'll talk more about different cases, I think. Okay, let's go to the Shmiras Haloshen. We're up to Perkid Aleph, right?
Yes.
Okay, Yivar boy Goydel Schar Shmiras Halosh Boilam Hazo Olam Haba. We'll explain here. Perkid Aleph. The great reward there is for Shmiras Haloshen, both in this world and the next world. The Gam Yivar boy Malas Hasholim will also discuss how great is peace, Sholim. So he says, Oid yesh b'shmiras haloshen kama malis kedushos. In Shmiras Haloshen, he says there are other malis kedushos. Number one, nitzah de'zeh mikol ha'ontim shaboim avur zehachet. First of all, you don't get punished for all the averus that come for speaking lashon hara. So that's a maila. Number two, hu batuach de'zeh b'mashi yistaker mahatachlis hanirtza shel yavdenu me'ata. Number two, he's assured that he's gonna get rewarded for what he's for his actions, that it won't be lost. He says, because otherwise, if you do speak lashon hara, we said already earlier that you could lose all your Torah and mitzvahs, and it could go to the person you spoke about. The Mal Perek Gimel Perek Vav b'Shem HaMedrash. Number three, you get the title that you're called Ish. If you're not careful with lashon hara, you're not called a Ish. Right? We get a Chai Sheina Medaber. You're considered on the level of a Chai Sheina Medaber, like an animal. Visa b'Medrash Sheichatov, but Rishonim Kayom Nigosh. Rishonim are like Kayom Nigosh Mahayom Peril Kol Refesh Asfa. So just like the sea spits out all the garbage on the banks. Af Harishayim Poltim Arefes Asosayim, so too the Rishayim spit out their garbage on their mouths. Number 4, just like he keeps himself back, he overcomes himself from speaking bad. Kategera is like prosecuting. And he always looks for merit by others. So too, in Shammai, the Malachim speak good about him. On top of that, if you're careful about speaking Lashon Hara, you're clothed with a Ruach Kadisha, and he quotes it. Anyone who watches his mouth and tongue. Zoche, he merits the slabsha to be addressed, to be dressed. Berucha de kutsha. He also gets hashpah, gets plenty, gets. Says in the Medrash, right? Shouldn't eat basa basara, feed it to the dogs. It's coming to teach me. Kosh Baruch Hu doesn't cheat. The reward of every creation, Shenemar. Because when it was in Yitzias Mitzrayim, it said, that by the Jews, the dogs didn't bark at all. The dogs barking was a sign of death, and they didn't bark at all by the Jews. And therefore, here the dogs are rewarded by getting the nevelis, the treifas of the Jews. That's what the pasuk's indicating. It says it's a kavachayim. If this is true, even for an animal, so Adam like kol shekain, so a person who's careful not to bark, not to speak wrong, certainly Hashem's going to give him reward. Says also, all that time that you watch yourself and you're careful for not speaking, you made a tremendous level in Gan Eden, as the Vilna Gaon quotes. For every moment that a person closes his mouth, Oragon is your merit in the next world, the Oragonus. That nobody could evaluate the greatness of this Oragonus. Top of it all, you saved from Gehenna. If you want to save yourself from Gehenna, distance yourself from Lashon Hara. Okay, short limud today.